Of all the rise and fall stories which have littered football over the past decade or so, Saido Berahino's is the one which has stuck with me most, and I think you'll see why after watching this video. He had one of the most difficult starts to life that I've ever heard of in the sport. Born in the poorest country on earth, Burundi in Central Africa in 1993, his father died when he was just 4 years old, as a devastating civil war gripped the country. It was clearly a traumatic time for the boy, as he later recalled, "If I ask questions about how my father died, it will bring back memories that I don't want to go back through." And Saido has spoken recently about how the lack of a father figure massively negatively impacted him throughout his life and career.
How it's so important to have a father figure in your life. I think I missed that massively. That was probably one of the weakest areas in my life because I just never had somebody to guide me and look after me.
He learned how to play football by having kickabouts with his friends using balls made out of plastic bags held together with laces. The situation in his homeland got so bad that his mother and older sister had to flee for the safer shores of England, with the 10-year-old Saido making the journey alone later. Having been granted asylum in Birmingham, officials moved to track down his mother, but even after seeing her for the first time in God knows how long, they couldn't be together properly as they awaited the results of a DNA test. Once reunited with his family, Saido attended Ashton Manor in Birmingham, where the already difficult task of settling in was made much more difficult by the fact that he couldn't speak a word of English. Football and sports in general helped Berahino to integrate, where his natural goal-scoring talents for local team Phoenix United saw him impress his classmates and eventually West Brom's academy scouts, who signed him up to the under-12s and sought to add technique and strategy to his game. Upon graduating high school with 10 GCSEs, he signed his first professional contract with West Brom. He was then sent on 3 different loans, the first one to Northampton Town, where he had such a grim experience he only tasted victory once in the 15 games he played there, that he was on the phone begging West Brom sporting director Dan Ashworth to recall him. He was told it would be an experience which would make him a man, and in fairness he managed to score 6 goals for the League One strugglers. He then went to Brentford, where he was doing well with 4 and 8, but it was here that the seeds of Berahino being a bit of a bad boy were planted, a narrative that would gleefully be given arms and legs by the press years down the line. By his own admission, he would regularly show up late to training and then clash with manager Uwe Rosler over how he chose to spend his evenings.
My friends kept staying in the hotel and making noise, so the coach didn't like that.
He also started his tricky relationship with Twitter while at the Bees, venting his frustration after being hooked against Leyton Orient in an angry tweet. All this meant Rosler thought he was more trouble than he was worth and sent him back to West Brom. His final loan to Peterborough also didn't last for its intended duration, this time due to him fracturing his patella after only 10 games and 2 goals for the Posh. He had to undergo surgery and spent almost a year on the sidelines. This turned out to be a blessing in disguise, as it allowed him to witness something which took his game to the next level. A 20-year-old Romelu Lukaku was on loan at West Brom from Chelsea, and Saido noticed that after training he would take one of the youngsters and a bag full of balls to another pitch and drill finishing over and over again. The young Berahino had never seen anyone do that before, and the fact that he was taking the Premier League by storm, being the 6th top scorer with 17 goals, was all the evidence that he needed that the Belgian was onto something. And once fit, he started doing the same and worked his socks off over the summer to get in shape. This paid off big style, as he was on the radar of Baggy's boss Steve Clarke, who saw that Berahino could be a homegrown solution to the striker situation which was giving him a headache before the season. As Lukaku had gone back to parent club Chelsea and Peter Odemwingie had fallen out of favour, Clarke was considering dipping into the transfer market, but Berahino's efforts in training and his enormous talent and potential convinced him to give his young forward a chance in the first team, and it was a breakthrough season for Berahino, as he made 32 Premier League appearances, albeit 21 of those came from the bench, scoring 5 and assisting 2 and ending up as his team's top scorer. His first league goal was undoubtedly the pick of the bunch in the Prem, and surely a strike which Saido will never forget. West Brom were drawing 1-1 with Man United at Old Trafford when Berahino provided the deadly finishing touch to a well-worked move to net what would prove to be the winner in a famous away victory for the Baggies. Just a month prior to that, he had scored a brilliant hat-trick on his full West Brom debut against Newport County in the League Cup, and there was a real buzz about the player and just how far he could go. Keen to tie him down, West Brom offered him a new 3.5-year deal worth £14,000 a week in December, which Berahino duly signed.
I'm delighted for Saido. He deserves it, he's worked hard.
That season did not pass without incident, however, as with the campaign drawing to a close, West Brom found themselves teetering above the drop zone when they faced a massive relegation 6-pointer against Cardiff City on matchday 32. In an absolutely thrilling match, Thierry Bissouma pounced on Berahino's cross to grab West Brom's third and put them 3 3-2 up in the 94th minute. The ball broke to Saido after the restart, and rather than running the clock down by taking it to the corner flag, he tried to score. Cardiff got possession and grabbed a late equaliser. Tempers ran high after this, and James Morrison was furious with his teammates' lack of contrition and went for him in the dressing room, reportedly smacking him in the face. Saido apologised on Twitter, declined to take legal action, and it all blew over as he helped West Brom to stay up, scoring the only goal in a vital win over West Ham on game day 36. The following campaign would be the one that changed everything for Saido. He was the story of the season and the name on everyone's lips as he took the Prem by storm, scoring 14. He was electric and scored several stunning goals. His way of playing, his skill, positioning, movement and devastating accuracy in front of goal was reminiscent of one of the players that he had studied and modelled his game on, Jermaine Defoe. He showed on several occasions that he could do it against the best in the league as well, with strikes against Man United, Liverpool and a brace against champions Chelsea at the end of the season. He was also on fire in the FA Cup, scoring 5 and assisting 5 as West Brom got to the 6th round. It was a marvellous season for him personally, and he was named the club's Player of the Year. He was not without his controversies though, and several high-profile incidents saw him regularly plastered all over the tabloids, who relished painting him as a wild child and the new bad boy of English football. Negotiations for a new contract, which would have seen his weekly wage more than triple to 50k a week, were shelved after he was arrested for drink driving in November, an offence which he admitted to in court and received a 12-month driving ban. A video of him inhaling laughing gas surfaced. It was the second time he had been pictured dabbling in the balloons. He apologised for his actions in this statement. This was very poor judgment on my part, and not the right example to be setting. At the time, I wasn't fully aware of the serious health risks involved, but now I know I won't be doing it again. His off-field conduct was worrying his club, who were beginning to wonder whether the high-maintenance youngster was more trouble than he was worth, and a tipping point came in February when he said this in an unsanctioned interview with Sky Sports. "I need to stay focused on what I'm doing right now, which is scoring the goals and keeping West Brom in the Premier League. If I can keep them up and score as many goals as I can, I'm pretty sure the fans wouldn't mind me pushing on and moving on to bigger things." It was reported that the hierarchy at West Brom were fed up with the player and were ready to offload him in the summer if their valuation of upwards of £20 million was met. And after Berahino's goals did help the Baggies to an 11th place finish, there was indeed plenty of interest in his services. Tottenham were clearly the most keen and came in with a couple of bids, both of which failed to meet chairman Jeremy Peace's valuation of him and were rejected. An unsettled Saido was left out of the matchday squad for 2 games and handed in a transfer request which was also rejected. On deadline day, 2 final bids from Spurs were rejected, and a despondent Berahino published a now infamous tweet where he vowed never to play for the chairman again. From the outside, it looked like yet another instance of player power, where a pampered prima donna was throwing his toys out of the pram in order to get what he wanted. Berahino has since spoke about what went on behind the scenes and has revealed that a fiery meeting with Jeremy Peace, in which he reduced Saido's mother to tears, pushed him to tweeting out his anger and frustration.
And that's how deep it was, because he made my mom cry in front of me, you know, and I've never really seen her cry in that way. Like, she was just so upset. Until this day, she still holds grudges.
The ambitious young Sadio Berahino would never get over or move past his crushing disappointment at not being allowed to have the chance to play for one of the top 6, and his career entered a downward spiral. Despite apologising and patching things up behind closed doors,
I hold my hand up and I say it was a mistake from me, and then I just apologise to all the fans out there.
Poor form and fitness concerns led Tony Pulis to bench the striker. In the winter window, a £21 million bid came in from Newcastle, but nothing came of it, which maybe was a shame, because although Newcastle got relegated that season, the chance to work under Rafa Benitez and go straight back up to the Premier League might have sparked new life into his career. And of course, Newcastle are a massive club. We will never know what could have been anyway. He ended up staying with West Brom and scored what would be his last goal for them in a 3-2 victory over Crystal Palace. No one could have predicted how long it would be till he found the net again. And to add insult to injury, the striker saw 2 penalties saved in a 1-0 loss to Watford toward the end of that campaign. He would miss again from the spot at the start of next season, as his team were dumped out of the League Cup by his former club Northampton Town. Not long after this, he was dropped from the team and sent to France to work on his fitness and get back in shape, as he was deemed to be overweight. In a raw and real statement on the club's website, he opened up about how difficult the past year had been for him, that he he was lacking self-belief, was depressed and unable to focus on the pitch. In later interviews, he talked about how he ended up hating the club that he loved from a young age. This all clearly stemmed from the Spurs transfer incident and subsequent media furore surrounding him. The real reason for his absence would later be revealed, as it came out that he had served an 8-week ban for a positive drugs test which had found low levels of the drug MDMA in his system. Speaking to the BBC, Berahino was adamant that his drink had been spiked in a nightclub, which resulted in the failed drug test. On the 20th of January 2017, Saido Berahino joined Stoke for a fee of £12 million, with a tough love message from ex-boss Tony Pulis.
Yeah, we wish Saido all the best. He needs to get his act together in respect of, being a footballer again. And for a long time, there were lots of things swirling around in his head that were, very, very difficult for him to handle.
His time at Stoke can only be described as a nightmare. Saido has spoken about how much the senior players like Darren Fletcher, Nicholas Anelka, Yusuf Malumbu and Ben Foster helped him when he was coming through at West Brom. It was a totally different world at Stoke. He seriously struggled with his mental health the whole time he was at the Potters.
I'm not going to lie to you, my time at Stoke was full of depression.
And if you've ever suffered with depression, you know it's a serious mission to motivate yourself to do even the simplest of tasks. And I think this is reflected in the ludicrous amount of fines for turning up late that he racked up while there. Ex-teammate Stephen Ireland estimated he must have been spending £500 a day on fines. It got so bad that he was banished to the under-23s by a Paul Lambert who was at the end of his tether. And on the field, it was a miserable and rotten time for Berahino. Stoke were struggling in the Premier League, and across his first 2 seasons with the club, he could only muster 28 appearances, failing to hit the back of the net even once, as the Potters were relegated in 2018. At the start of his first and only season in the Championship with Stoke, he broke a scoring duck that stretched back to February 2016, an historically awful drought of 913 days. It did not mark an opening of the floodgates or a return to his early West Brom form, as he only scored 4 more goals. While he was at Stoke, he was hounded and harassed by the British tabloid scum media, who are at their best when they're kicking people who are down, and they did their utmost to try and completely destroy his career. They reported any negative story they could about him and his love life, or his infidelity, or that he allegedly fathered 3 different children to 3 different women, or his fitness, or his lack of discipline, even resorting to making things up. It was a misreported story which got Saido the sack at Stoke. He had been out enjoying a meal with his missus in a restaurant in London when he got robbed at knife point and gunpoint. Fearing for his safety, he fled the scene in his car, where the police would find him, breathalyze him and charge him with drink driving. The Daily Mail were the first ones to get wind of the story, and the next day printed that he'd been arrested for driving while under the influence, completely ignoring the fact that the footballer had been robbed. Stoke ripped up his contract, and he would later be found guilty in court, fined £75,000 and banned for 30 months. His chances of finding another club in England were all but trashed when his Stoke teammate Glenn Johnson sensationally slammed him on TalkSport.
He had the wrong mentality, the wrong attitude from day one, always going against the grain. If we was told to wear this, he'd deliberately wear something different. It was almost like he had a vendetta against them from the start. His total disrespect for the staff, the players, and that's what he was like on a daily basis. So if I was a manager or an owner of a club, I wouldn't take him if he paid me to play.
Perhaps one of the only positives for Saido during his time at Stoke was that he was able to switch allegiances from England to his native Burundi. He had represented the Three Lions all throughout youth level, coming through at the same time as Harry Kane, even seen as a better prospect by some in the youth setup, and had been called up to the senior squad but never made it off the bench. He is currently the captain of the Burundi national team and has scored 2 goals in 18 games. After the protracted and difficult process of terminating his contract with Stoke was eventually completed, he signed for Belgian First Division club Zulte Waregem. Away from the destructive glare of the British media spotlight, Berahino started to score some goals again and was finally enjoying his football once more. Unfortunately, the pandemic hit and it was no longer financially viable for him to remain in Belgium. After a couple of years on the continent, he decided the time was right for another crack at English football, and he joined Sheffield Wednesday on a 1-year deal. Owls boss Darren Moore was a man Saido knew well, having previously worked with him at West Brom. He endured a slow and tricky start, as it was clear that he was lacking fitness and struggling to readapt to the physicality of the English game. In his first 16 matches, he only scored 1 goal, as he was used mainly as a substitute. He burst into life a little from February to April, scoring 7 and assisting 2 in 13 games. It appeared to be too little too late, and it wasn't enough to convince Sheffield that he was worth keeping, and he was released. He now plays in Cyprus for AEL Limassol, where he is not exactly breaking any scoring records, with only 4 goals in 33 3 appearances. For me, Sadio Berahino is the biggest what if of the past 10 years. Sure, there are question marks over his attitude and professionalism, and he let his teammates and managers down at times, but he was young, and I feel, given the right environment, he could have outgrown that. Also, many of those he played and worked with at West Brom have only good things to say about him. I guess the feeling that his life was being controlled and his career stalled by someone who didn't have his best interests at heart was something he couldn't get over, not to mention the media's obsession with tearing him down. It's no wonder that he became depressed. But before all that happened, boy was he an exciting and fun talent to watch on the pitch, and I feel it's a shame it never worked out.